Okay, so get this. We've been digging into this recent election, the one where Republicans really cleaned up,
Yeah.
and we found this analysis. It's fascinating. It goes way deeper than just like who won and lost.
Right.
It gets into like the why.
The motivations.
Yeah, exactly. Like what was really going on with voters. And get this, it's all super relevant to crypto.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this particular deep dive so interesting. We're not just talking about politics for the sake of politics.
Right.
This stuff could directly impact the crypto space, which,
Big time.
is kind of our bread and butter here.
Okay, so first thing that really jumped out at me was this idea they call the echo chamber effect.
Uh-huh.
The analysis basically says that Democrats, maybe they've gotten a little too isolated from moderate voters,
Interesting.
which led to a lot of those voters, they either just didn't vote
Yeah.
or they actually flipped and voted Republican.
Yeah, and this is something that's been building for a while, and the analysis uses some pretty hard numbers to back it up. Yeah. They looked at polling data, especially from those key swing states,
Makes sense.
and they found this big drop in support for Democrats among moderate voters compared to earlier elections.
Where was that drop the biggest?
Well, it was really noticeable in the suburbs, and especially among voters who consider themselves independent, not tied to either party.
The swing voters. Those are the ones everyone's always trying to win over.
Exactly. Historically, the winning campaigns, they've managed to build a bridge to those voters.
Right.
Focus on those issues that can bring people together, regardless of what party they belong to.
It's kind of like what happened in the 2018 midterms. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was actually living in a pretty conservative district back then. But even there, the Democratic candidate, she managed to connect with people
How so?
by focusing on healthcare. That was something everyone cared about. Democrat or Republican didn't matter.
Right, because it was a real, tangible concern for people, not just some abstract political debate. In my world, that's what effective communication is all about. Really understanding who you're talking to and tailoring your message. Because when you don't, you know what happens.
Right.
You end up pushing people away, even the ones who might actually agree with you deep down.
And that's what this analysis suggests might have happened with women voters too, right?
Yeah. It's tricky because it's not that women don't care about things like reproductive rights. But the analysis found that for a lot of women, those everyday worries like how to pay the bills, how to keep their families safe, those issues, they ended up taking priority.
Because those are immediate problems.
Exactly, like right in your face problems.
Yeah, if you're struggling to put food on the table, those bigger issues, they kind of fade into the background.
Right, and the analysis uses this great phrase, they call it kitchen table issues,
Love that.
to describe these very real, tangible concerns that, for a lot of women, were front and center as they headed to the polls.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, how do you balance those big picture issues with the stuff that's hitting people right here, right now?
It's a tough one, for sure.
The analysis also talks about how a lot of men felt demonized, is the word they use.
Yeah.
And not just white working class men, which is what you usually hear,
Right.
but men from minority groups too. Like, they felt alienated by the Democrats.
It's interesting. It makes you think about the whole identity politics thing.
Yeah.
And how sometimes it can actually backfire.
How so?
Because when you start lumping people into these broad categories,
Right.
you miss all the nuance, all the individual experiences. And the analysis actually found that a lot of men felt like they were being unfairly stereotyped, blamed for all these societal problems. And that created this kind of resentment.
Makes sense. It's like when someone tries to tell you who you are without actually getting to know you.
Exactly. And that's never a good way to build trust or start a conversation.
Which is kind of what politics should be about, right? Like a conversation
Ideally, yes.
where you're actually listening to each other, trying to find common ground, instead of just yelling and pointing fingers.
Couldn't agree more. And this is where the analysis gets really interesting because it also challenges another one of those big assumptions.
What?
The whole idea of Latinx as one unified voting bloc. They're saying, hold on, it's not that simple. Hispanic communities, they're incredibly diverse. They have a huge range of viewpoints, different priorities. You can't just assume they all think alike or vote the same way.
You know what? That actually reminds me of the crypto world. We always talk about the crypto community.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. There's so much diversity within that community.
Huge. Different levels of understanding, different reasons for being involved.
Different needs, different concerns.
And this is where the analysis connects back to politics. Because it's saying, hey, Maybe Democrats missed an opportunity to connect with Hispanic voters
All right.
on things like financial inclusion, which is an area where, crypto could actually play a role.
Totally. Crypto has the potential to level the playing field in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. So it's not just about understanding the diversity within communities, it's about seeing the opportunities that diversity presents.
Okay, so let's talk about crypto specifically. The analysis really calls out both parties for how they've talked about it.
Hmm.
Basically, they say both sides have been vilifying it.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch, hasn't it? Crypto's become this kind of political football
Totally.
getting kicked around by both sides.
But the analysis also suggests that a Republican win, and specifically a Trump win, could lead to some serious changes in how crypto is regulated, especially when it comes to foreign involvement in the American market.
Yeah, this is where things get super relevant for our listeners. Because Trump, he hasn't exactly been a crypto cheerleader, has he?
Not really.
He's expressed skepticism about Bitcoin in the past, and he's very much focused on protecting the dominance of the US dollar.
Which makes sense from his perspective.
Of course.
He wants America to be on top.
Right. And so the analysis suggests that if Trump's back in the White House, we might see some much stricter regulations,
Like what?
especially targeting foreign players in the U.S. crypto market, maybe even limitations on how Americans can interact with foreign crypto entities. It's all speculation, of course,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something to watch closely.
So basically what we're taking away from all this is there could be some major regulatory shifts on the horizon for crypto.
Big time.
And a lot of it depends on how these political battles shake out.
It's a lot to digest, I know. But what I keep coming back to is that both sides, they could actually end up moving back towards the center a bit.
Interesting. Why do you think that?
Well, this election was a bit of a wake-up call, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
Maybe it'll force both parties to rethink some of their strategies, tone down the rhetoric,
Right.
focus more on finding common ground. And if that happens, who knows? We might actually see some more balanced legislation and regulation.
Especially in areas like crypto where, let's face it, you need bipartisan support to get anything done.
100%. You need both sides on board if you want to create a stable, innovative environment.
So much to think about. We've covered a lot of ground here. This whole echo chamber effect, the importance of addressing those real-life concerns that people have.
Yeah.
The power of using inclusive language, not making assumptions about entire groups of people.
And of course, the potential impact on the crypto world.
That's the big one for our listeners.
Absolutely. But for me, the biggest takeaway is this. It all boils down to communication. Really listening to voters, understanding where they're coming from,
Yeah.
and speaking to them in a way that actually connects.
So well said. It makes me wonder, if you were advising a political party right now, how would you craft a message that would actually resonate with a wide range of voters?
Honestly, I'd tell them to put down the megaphones and start having real conversations.
Food for thought.
For sure.
Thanks for diving into all this with me.
My pleasure. Always good to chat.
Until next time.
See ya.
Keep those brains buzzing.